young and frustrated by the Israel-Palestine conflict. A new generation is protesting with defiance and speaking up on social media. But are leaders hearing their demands for change? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. Some call them the new face of activism against Israeli occupation. Young Palestinians and some Israelis, frustrated by their political leaders, are making their voices heard. They've been at the forefront of protests against Israeli airstrikes on Gaza and the forced displacement of Palestinians from their homes in occupied East Jerusalem. Some smiled defiantly when arrested by Israeli security forces, much of it captured and shared on social media. Messages of support from celebrities and social movements like Black Lives Matter have been shared hundreds of thousands of times. Some activists posted graphics online to try to explain the history of the conflict. And a video of The Daily Show host Trevor Noah reacting to the violence has been viewed more than 3 million times.
If you are in a fight where the other person cannot beat you, how hard should you retaliate when they try to hurt you? I'm just talking about the difference in power, which is something we do all the time. I mean, think about policing. If a man has a knife, should the cops shoot him? In many parts around the world, like in the UK, they say, well, we're going to do everything we can to try and not shoot the person, even at risk to ourselves, because at the end of the day, they brought a knife to a gunfight. When you have this much power, what is your responsibility?
All right, let's bring in our guests. In occupied East Jerusalem, Mariam Afifi, a Palestinian activist who was arrested by Israeli soldiers during the Sheikh Jarrah protests. In Brooklyn, Morriah Kaplan, spokesperson for IfNotNow, a movement of American Jews working to end American Jewish support for the occupation. And in Gaza, Najla Shawa, a humanitarian worker. A warm welcome to you all. Mariam, let me start with you today. There is a video showing you as you're being arrested by Israeli security forces that went viral. I want to play a few seconds of that for our viewers, and then I'll come back to you with a question.
What did I do? Just defending a girl who was being beaten? That's why I'm arrested now? Defending people that are going to be kicked out of their houses?
Later in that video, we also see you looking at the camera and smiling defiantly as you're being detained. So I want to ask you first, what was going through your mind while all this was happening? And also, did you expect this to get the kind of reaction that it has?
Hello. First of all, I didn't expect this to get the attention that it got. I didn't know that it was filmed in the first place. Basically, what was going in my mind is that I was so angry. I was so angry because what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah is exactly what's happening in Jerusalem, and it's exactly what happens in Palestine in general, and what happened in Palestine in 1948. I was so angry because it's still happening until today. I was questioning him, like, why do you do this? Why should we still go through this for more than 70 years now? So since 1948, Palestinians and Palestine is under an ongoing reshaping of the land, and it hasn't stopped yet. It hasn't still stopped until today, and it won't stop if there's still an occupation. So even if we win the Sheikh Jarrah cause, the occupation won't stop in its attempts and in its occupation.
Najla, when you see this kind of activism from a younger generation of Palestinian activists that's emerging right now, that's getting so much attention in the media and on social media platforms, when you see the videos like the one that we just showed a few seconds of showing Mariam smiling as she is being arrested very defiantly, what does that make you think? Does that make you feel more hopeful for the future?
Well, first of all, I'm proud to be on this show and with Mariam, and Mariam, of course, with this video and with similar activism, it can't but bring hope again. For the longest period, I think we have lost it. We have been thinking for a while that we are talking to ourselves, we are complaining to ourselves, we are shouting and screaming and saying, no, this can't go on for longer, as if we are talking to a wall. And having this new generation with this such an amazing example, it shows that this is the truth. This is when the truth has to be revealed. It can't stay forever. Generation after generation will not be erasing, what happened before. It doesn't work like this. And finally, the world need to know that, need to see it. And for me, as a Palestinian living in Gaza, to see this is so valuable. It brings back some hope for sure.
So I want to take a moment, take a step back and look at something that happened at the Congress in the U.S. There were progressive Democratic members of U.S. Congress on Thursday. They were responding to the ongoing conflict with some questioning of the U.S. government's unconditional support of Israel. Let's take a listen.
We must, with no hesitation, demand that our country recognize the unconditional support of Israel has enabled the erasure of Palestinian life and the denial of the rights of millions of refugees.
Let me be clear. Every single death in this conflict is a tragedy. Every rocket and bomb that targets civilians is a war crime.
Morriah, when you see what happened in Congress, when you hear progressive voices who are drawing parallels between the plight of the Palestinians and the injustices faced by Black Americans. They're also comparing Israel's posture with apartheid-era South Africa. What does that make you think? Do you feel as though in some ways public sentiment is shifting? Just the fact that we are hearing rhetoric from people in Congress that we wouldn't really have heard just a few years back?
Absolutely. I think there's a huge shift underway. And I think, seeing Representative Tlaib on the House floor, telling the stories of Palestinians and of her family. And these are the voices and stories that have been so systematically excluded and hidden from us. And I think our politics are really being transformed by having a Palestinian American woman in Congress for the first time. And, and I think, as you said, this sort of national and international reckoning that we are having about race and justice. I think young Jewish people, we're being sort of asked to apply that logic, we understand and we're learning about the experiences of Black Americans in this country, and then we're being asked to not apply that logic in Palestine, and that's just something that we're not going to do anymore. That so many people are not willing to ignore anymore.
Mariam, whenever I've reported out of occupied East Jerusalem or the occupied West Bank or Gaza in the past, time and again, I encounter Palestinians who tell me how frustrated they are with Palestinian political leadership and how ineffective Palestinian politicians have been. Let me ask you, did you set out to be an activist? I mean, I see that you are a cellist with the Palestine Youth Orchestra. But, is this really the only course forward to see any kind of change?
First of all, I'm a contrabassist, not a cellist.
My apologies for that.
No, it's fine. Basically, we don't have anyone to represent us as Palestinians. The Israeli propaganda and the Israeli media is really powerful. Nobody would tell the stories of us Palestinians or us Palestinians living in Israel or in Jerusalem. For example, what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah is just an ongoing thing that happens every day in Jerusalem. The Israeli Ministry of Interior sets its demographic goal for Jerusalem at 70% Israeli. This means getting the growing number of Palestinians to move out of the city. Since 1967 until today, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced by ways of house demolitions, discriminatory policies, and other different ways. So basically, from the beginning, the occupation implemented colonial policies of displacement, land confiscation, and other ways. But despite all the difficulties we as Palestinians from Jerusalem go through to get us out of here, most Palestinians choose to stay and stand up for their rights and dignity and future.
Najla, earlier today I saw that you tweeted, "I'm very lucky I could sleep for 3 continuous hours. North and East Gaza experienced hell last night." So I want to ask you, what is the situation there like right now?
I don't know if you heard that explosion, but the situation has been extremely tense. We have experienced 2014 and whatever was before. And I don't know, trying to describe that in words is hard. But to put it maybe in a simple way, you are talking about a continuous bombardment with a variety of ways, continuous drone fighter jets, Navy tank shelling that started last night and contributed to the hell that I was referring to, especially in the areas of East Gaza and the north of Gaza City and the north of the Gaza Strip. Which, I mean, all my friends and the people I know about, I know of and I'm communicating with, we were just through the night trying to check on them and what broke and what didn't break and what is being destroyed and who is escaping their home and all the anxiety, the panic. The people were telling me they're seeing from their own windows people leaving their homes and evacuating, running away, fleeing these bombings. The rumors that also kept on spreading around the internet and among people along the line of this bombardment, this heavy round that took place was that Israel is actually invading. The troops are getting in, while this apparently was later denied and nothing happened. Now, the misery of this is that it happened before, and each time it happens with a certain level of intensity. I even thought of a sentence. I don't know if it will make sense, but a war doesn't have a limit; it has thresholds. Each time there is a certain threshold that gets that it's moved, it's flexible, you know, and it keeps on going up and up. So whenever somebody calls me and tells me, "How are you doing?" I tell them I'm fine, because I know that there is always worse and there is always a worse situation. And however, this teaches us that things can go much worse. And the more people you know who are affected, who have left their homes, who are evacuated, who are now sitting out nowhere in just random public place or a school or relatives. I know many of those, unfortunately, and they have no idea what's going to happen next. However, this time, these very difficult hours, what is important is that we keep ourselves sane, mentally sane, within the house. Me and my 2 daughters and my husband. That's really our goal, because this is such a big achievement during these difficult times.
Morriah, the stated mission of your organization is trying to build a movement of Jews to end the Israeli occupation. What steps need to be taken in order for that to happen?
Well, I'll say our mission is actually to end, while ending the occupation is a worthwhile mission, ours our goals are more humble in that we're trying to end our community's support for the occupation and really end the orthodoxy in our community that says that Jewish safety is reliant on Palestinian suffering. And we see that as an important step, given how often Jewish safety is cited as the reason for our government's complicity in the occupation and in upholding systems of apartheid in Israel. And so, you know, we are building on decades of Jewish progressive organizing and Palestinian organizing on this issue, and are really trying to do our part so that our community can be on the right side of this issue.
Mariam, let me ask you, is Palestinian leadership hearing these demands for change?
Basically, nobody, I don't think is anybody hearing, like, from the leadership or organizations or human, like human rights organizations or whatever. I think what we're doing is very individualist, like it's done by individuals. So basically the ones who started the movement and started showing the world what we're doing and what's happening in Jerusalem, what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, are people from the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, Muna al-Kurd and Mohammed al-Kurd. They used the only weapon that we have as Palestinians, which is social media. We used it as a way for us to express ourselves, to reach the humans around the world, to reach free humans around the world. And still, this weapon is, they are trying to take it away from us. So posts and accounts that tweet or that talk about Palestine and that tell our stories are being deleted. So basically, no one represents us from governments or organizations. What we do is only individualistic, and we do it by our own.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. You know, because so much of this is being shared so widely, you have a lot of people who don't typically engage in politics, and they are widely sharing infographics and videos that are expressing solidarity with the Palestinians. What I'm curious about is, do you believe that this type of activism, some people call it hashtag activism, but do you believe that this type of activism, you know, on these social media platforms is actually leading to a deeper kind of engagement on the issues?
Before this time, before what's happening today, before, like in 2009, houses in Sheikh Jarrah were displaced, and settlers took these houses, and until today they are still living in these houses. Before, the news would talk about what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, but they still could make it because nobody knew about it. During my protest in Sheikh Jarrah, I met a girl from another city in Palestine, and I told her, I hope this what happened in 2009 won't happen again. And she didn't know what happened in 2009 because the news didn't reach her, because Israeli media is really powerful. Israeli propaganda is really powerful. Our news, our stories couldn't reach anyone in the world. Today, our news, our sounds, our shouts are reaching many people around the world because we are the producers of our story. We produce the story. We take the photos. We take the footage. We take these stories and share them to the world. And this is why they started fighting against our stories and fighting against our posts. I do believe that because we could share our stories very widely and share our voices very widely, I do have hope that we will win the case in Sheikh Jarrah. But winning the case in Sheikh Jarrah doesn't mean ending the occupation, because what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah isn't only happening in Sheikh Jarrah. It's happening in the rest of the occupied territories and the rest of historical Palestine.
Morriah, I saw you nodding along to a lot of what Mariam was saying there, so I wanted to see if you had a reaction you wanted to add. And I also wanted to get, from your perspective, your reaction. I mean, do you believe that this kind of activism that we're seeing playing out, you know, in so many social media platforms right now is actually going to lead to a deeper engagement when it comes to discussing these issues?
Well, I'll just start. I mean, I think what Mariam was saying about, it's right now the focus is on Sheikh Jarrah, but solving the crisis in Sheikh Jarrah is not going to end the occupation or end systems of apartheid. And I think that's something that we're really trying to lift up in our organizing around this. And I think so often, and what's very frustrating is so often it's described as isolated cases of violence or, a conflict between two equal partners. And that's just not the case. And that is completely decontextualized. And as both Najla and Mariam has said, it totally misses kind of the reality on the ground. And it also ignores the fact that, the tools that Israel is using are furnished by the United States, many of them by the United States government. Our government gives $3.8 billion of military aid to Israel every year. And so, those are U.S. bombs and U.S. fighter jets that are flattening, whole buildings in Gaza. It's U.S. diplomatic backing that is trying to, shield the settlement enterprise from any consequences. And so I think, and I was really touched by what Mariam said about, that being the producers of your own story. And I do think that's really important, again, because as I said, similar to Representative Tlaib sharing on the House floor, these stories of Palestinians and what Palestinians have experienced at the hands of, all this Israeli violence and this campaign to expand Jewish supremacy that has been ongoing for decades. And that Americans have to listen to those stories. And so I think it's really important that people are seeing that. I think social media has made that much more accessible. And I think that's important.
Najla, if I may, I'd like to ask you a little bit more of a personal question. One of the more horrifying aspects of all this is the fact that children are continuing to die. As an aid worker, as a humanitarian worker, as a mother, how does that make you feel to continue seeing that play out in Gaza?
Well, of course, it's we live here all our lives, and as a mother, maybe I will pick that one first. As my older daughter is 6.5, and in 2014 war, I was pregnant with her. The story maybe started initially then, and then now with this new chapter where she understands and asks a very difficult, although very innocent, but very difficult questions. How can I protect her physically? Yeah, that is something, of course, but there's a limit to what we can do. However, how can I protect her brain, her mental health, her well-being, how she is raised as a human above all, but somebody who understands also what's wrong and what is right, and what is just and what is injustice, that her parents and her grandparents lived, and so on and so on. The problem is that the challenge that I feel is that how can I give her hope? Now, only these couple of days, despite how challenging and horrifying they are, and what fears I personally have now and today of what may come next, how tonight will be, or tomorrow, for them, with them, or beyond in the coming weeks. What is the balance that you can do as a parent that you can keep to keep them sane and human, but also teach them the problem? Why is this happening? And with these 2 days, as I mentioned, the amount of engagement around the world feels a bit different to me. Feels a bit different that not only the kind of quick support, sending messages, hope you're all right, stay safe, we're on your side. It's much deeper than this. What is more important is what's happening in Palestine, all of it and around it, even reaching Jordan or Lebanon, what we're seeing today in the news. This is like everyone is awake that this is wrong and it should stop. So I have some hope. However, I know I'm also realistic that this reality will not change in a day or in a second. However, I hope that my daughters will have the chance to live a less kind of traumatized experience and be just ordinary human beings.
All right, well, we have run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much to all of our guests, Mariam Afifi, Morriah Kaplan, and Najla Shawa. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see this and all of our previous programs, again, anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed, Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.